ready? I want to review just briefly so last Sunday we talked about the northern part and how the scriptures matched where Magog is and how the Bible talked about they were against God. That's really where Russia is. Here's Israel right in the middle, the red circle around it, and there's all these countries surrounding Israel. We were talking about the different ones. Here's Gomer. Okay, Gomer and his bands. And the bands really is talking about the army and those who would be against and fight to support Gomer. It's Genesis 10:2. So Gomer was the eldest son of Japheth. And the scripture reads, the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog. Okay. Gomer's descendants settled north of the Black Sea. Okay, let's look. Here's Gomer. Black Sea is right at the top left part of the screen. So they settled in this particular area. And what we know is Turkey. Oh, wait a minute, where'd it go? Okay, here we are. It says, extending southward and westward to Europe, the Hebrew designates this area as Germany. I'll skip all this commentary. Well, it's very specific. There's different countries around, but here's talking about Gomer's bands. You have Poland, Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia, that's really my heritage. That's from my generation, genealogy. You have Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, and Yugoslavia. The countries near Russia have been greatly influenced by her for many years. So Japheth, there's like different branches, but they're all the same country. Okay, it reads, Ezekiel accurately described an anti-God bloc. So really that means that there was a combination of countries together. You have Japheth here, and the sons, you have Gomer, Magog, Madai, and Javan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyrus. That's what's considered the anti-God bloc. That's the combination of those countries together, and they were against God. Again, here's a different visual showing Gomer here within Europe and middle of the screen. So it says, finally, the prophet includes Togarmah and his bands, the grandson of Japheth. This is found in Genesis 10:3. Find a scripture. And the sons of Gomer. This is grandson. Okay. Ashkenaz and Riphath. Excuse me. Riphath and Togarmah. So here on this genealogy table, you've got Japheth, and then goes down to Gomer, and then his kids, 3 sons under Gomer. That's Japheth's grandsons. Okay, there's a book. The person who wrote it is J. Dwight Pentecost. There's a study in biblical, I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, eschatology, whatever that means. Okay, these nations possibly include modern Turkey, Armenia. That's not America. Armenia and southern Russia. So it's over in that Europe country. Again, here's the breakdown of the genealogy table. I remember there was some confusion previously. I want to touch on that. Here's Shem. You see the numbers in the parentheses. You got 26, there's 30, and there's 14 under Japheth. It's a count of all the genealogies, descendants. So Japheth had 14, Ham had 30, and Shem had 26. This is their descendants. So if you take a look, there's Japheth, and you count them all. Here's Ham, you count them all. Shem, you count them all. And that's the total that was in parentheses. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure why Russia and her allies would prefer to attack Israel. Shem and Japheth. But certainly, the largest country in the world would not need Israel's land surface. What would compel this mighty nation to single out a small country of 3 to 4 million people? What would cause them to behave that way? Why would they be so resilient, resistive? Have that attitude. We want to be separated with, just different beliefs and different doctrines and so forth. So there are different beliefs, there's different religions, and then, there's a variety of different religions, and many times they're against others. But Israel, no, but there are countries against Israel, and it's happened from generation to generation. You've got Rome, Persia, and I'm going to be teaching on this. You have Greece. It's just variety. And you've got, I already said Rome, they were against Israel, so we'll talk about that soon. The scripture is very interesting, and it points to greed as a motive. We'll look at Ezekiel chapter 38 and verse 13 and see what it says. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants, those that sold, of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say to thee, art thou come to take spoil? And that means, are you going to take? Hast thou, I can't read, gathered that company to take prey? Like there's, birds and so like an eagle or hawks, they look down and they see the mouse or the rodent. The mouse or rodent would be the prey, and so the prey wants to hide because they know there's danger around. And the eagle can look down and aim for the attack and take the mouse or the rodent that's their prey. Okay, so this is considered, the prey is Israel, and the other countries is what would be like the eagle or the hawk. So this is to give you an understanding of what's coming out of the scripture. To continue, it says to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil. You know, the animals, and the goods are just a variety of things. You know, it is what it is. The goods, they're materialistic things. To take a great spoil. My wife and I had recently gone to Israel. We had a tour guide, and they would talk, and if the interpreter heard, they would, you know, try to sign and interpret what they were saying up front as they were talking. It's really hard for the interpreters to sign because of the bus. Anyway, they would show us things along the side of the road. And at one time there was possibly, I'm trying to remember if they said there was 4 water plants. But in the past, the water supply was very difficult. It was a very precious thing to them. And their wells were not deep enough to provide water and healthy water to the people. So there's the Mediterranean Sea, and there's a lot of salt, and then they can't physically drink that. So they created this plant, the system, where it would draw the water and clean up that water, take all the contaminants inside of it, which would be, you know, salt and other things, and clean it. And it's been done maybe like 10 years ago or so. It's been developed over time. And so these countries, they need water because it's so dry. And Israel offered them, hey, we'll help you. But these countries refused. Their vegetation, their fruit, it's very delicious. They're very decadent, and dates. They have dates and oranges, and you know, I was able to taste them. It was just delicious. They have all these things. But over here in this far country, it's very difficult. The supply is very small, if they have any. And so, getting back on point, you know, they were able to sell. Israel has, but all these far countries didn't. And they're dependent upon Israel to export to them, to provide for them. And so Israel developed all these benefits. And if you look back at the scripture, it has proven to be true, and based on the future. This is just a very awesome thing, how Israel has developed. And so these far countries around them are very jealous and very bitter about how productive they are, and they want to take ownership of Israel. Looking back at Ezekiel 38:13, where it talks about Ezekiel wrote what God told him. Israel will become prey, saying will. And those countries will look down upon them and be very greed, you know, full of greed. We want what Israel has. Very envious of them and just want it and want to take it. To carry away silver and gold. It's very valuable. And it's a very desirous thing for poor, you know, countries that don't have as much. They want what others have, in other words. Sheba and Dedan. Okay, looking here, it's a little further down, but it's interesting. If you look at the name, let me find it. It says United Arab Emirates, down by that water. It's DHABI. DHABI. Have you heard of this country? Very productive company, very wealthy and just very beautiful. They've got all these fancy buildings and hotels that's been built up. You know, some have like 40 floors, and the shapes are very intriguing and very interesting how they've created it. They've established it's you know, there's the land and then there's the water nearby. I'll have to show you a picture of it. I don't have internet availability right now, but it's been developed. There was oil there, but I'm thinking, wow, will the oil be depleted? And then later will their profits decline and they'll become less of an attractive country? And they'll maybe go back to Israel. Because they're not dependent on oil. They focus on food and water, and people depend on them. Here in this other country, it's oil. And when the oil is gone, what's going to happen? They're going to become hungry, and they will want to take over. I don't know. That may be what could happen in the future. Just put it out there. Someone's saying Kuwait has oil. Saying Kuwait.
Yeah.
You know, back in the 90s, there was the war. And they wanted to take over because of the oil. Okay, getting back. Israel is designed to become a very wealthy nation. She's without a doubt the economic marvel of the world. It's fact. They see how Israel has developed itself. God has blessed the country. All right, so the Middle East contains 2/3 of the world's proven oil reserves. Oil is vital to modern civilization, so it's an absolute of importance. You know, oil will decline later. You know, there's countries that they develop things to run off of, like the sun or so forth, because gas and oil, it can't always depend on it. The price is going to be more expensive. You know, there's been cars invented now that they can drive without fuel. I'm trying to remember. Telsa? Have you heard of this? Right now it's electric. Oil's declining. People being dependent on that kind of thing. So the creativity and the development of that, they're trying to avoid the oil. America's like, no, we don't need to buy your oil. And the economy's going to decline. So they're going to focus on Israel. Oh, they have food, they have water, they have all sorts of these things. And we're going to, you know, they're very good at selling. They don't need us. Let's, you know, take them over. Who knows? That could be what they're, you know, be the plan. I'm not going to touch base on that. The final reason could be that Israel is the land bridge to 3 continents. You have Europe, Asia, and Africa. Africa, Asia, and Europe here. You take a look at a map, and Israel's right in the middle. Find the scripture to match with what this says. It's a good point. Well, anyway, it says, according to Ezekiel, the vicious paw of the Russian bear could strike at any moment. We're going to talk about Daniel, the prophet, here soon. there was a dream of a king, and he dreamed of a visual, it was made up of different elements, and there was one that looked like a bear. We'll talk about what the meaning of that statue, so forth. Okay, all right. Here's the bear, or Russia. Now Israel's right here in the middle. You have these Saudi Arabia's down here, and that's, you know, Asia's over here as far as the continent. You have Africa over here, and then Europe towards the top. And they all kind of connect. However, Israel comes right in the middle. We're going to focus on the topic blood sacrifices soon to be restored. That means the third temple will be established. Matthew 24:15, Revelation 11, 1 and 2 will talk about that. Okay. So Christ's discourse, he was with his disciples, he communicated with them, he talked to them, trained them. He predicted that after Israel had been gathered, remember, talked about the countries. Israel became a nation in 1948, and they all returned back, the Israelis. And it talks about where the temple will be rebuilt with a holy place and a Mosaic system. Remember Moses? We're talking about the blood sacrifice being resumed. God had commanded how to sacrifice in the tabernacle. And Moses took all that down, and he documented all that, and how, you know, the animals would be, you know, sacrificed, how they would be clean, and what would be used of that animal, how it would be, you know, established as a sacrifice and burnt offering and so forth, and using the incense, how it would become holy, the Ark of the Covenant, the purpose of that, so forth. And God commanded Moses and explained to him, you know, that's in the Old Testament. When Jesus was born, he became our ultimate sacrifice. He was sacrificed, he was crucified, buried, and resurrected. There's no need for the tabernacle sacrifice any further, the temple. Because Jesus was our final sacrifice. His blood covers our sin. And it's the same principles from the Old Testament and the New Testament for salvation. Now, they continue to focus on the Old Testament being a blood sacrifice. And that's what Jesus was saying in Matthew 24. If you look at Revelation 14, you know, where there's a 144,000, that Jesus was our Messiah, sacrificed for the blood. Okay, so again, Matthew 24:15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. My sign is abomination, and here of desolation is destruction. Okay, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Stand in the holy place. It means against Christ. Stand in the holy place. That's what this phrase means. Stand in the holy place. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. That's the Gentiles that's going to take over. Remember, it talked about tramping on. And Jesus was saying this is going to happen. Continue in verse 16. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So Judea is Israel, and they're going to flee to the mountains. Let's look. It says, let them flee. Who are these? That's the Jews that believe Jesus was the Messiah. They're going to flee to the mountain. I plan on teaching that in very depth, talking about them fleeing. It's going to be Revelation chapter 12, I believe. I'm trying to remember. Chapter 12. Where it talks about Satan's going to cause a flood on Israel, but they're going to flee to the mountain. It's a metaphor. It's not real flooding, but the flood is going to drain from the earth. And they are not going to take captive or take ownership over Israel. It's a very interesting story. In Moses' time, there was a small group against Moses. And God said, okay, who those believe, let them stand outside. And they're just going to swallow them. And it happened. The earth opened up, and the earth swallowed them, and it closed back up. God did that. So this is a prophecy that it's going. There was some issue momentarily on Facebook. It was just a warning that storage is very little, so I'm going to have to clean this up. Okay, moving along. So Satan wants to flood Israel. Okay, so they're going to flee to the mountain. But what's going to happen is God's going to drain the earth. And the earth's going to take those that want to destroy Israel. There's a story, we'll talk about that. It's in Revelation chapter 12. It's going to be Wednesday night, if the weather permits. I'm praying the weather permits, if nothing's canceled Wednesday night. It's going to cooperate so I can teach this. We'll cover it in Revelation study Wednesday night. We're going to expand the scripture in further detail. Let me go back. Talking about the abomination. Let's expand on that. Abomination, it comes from the root word abominate. Historically, it's derived from a prefix, ab. So you know, if you take apart the word, you have a prefix, ab, and that means away or from. The root word omen, here it is in abominate, omen. This is an event that's regarded as a sign of good or evil. So AB and omen, creates abomin. So then together it creates the word abomination, which is used to describe something that is a sign of evil and inspires hatred. So those that are against God, there's a separation that takes place, away or from. So this is my sign, abomination. It's a separation. Okay? Now, Paul indicated a new temple would be adorned, or a worship place. It's decoration. With a new God. So adorned, it would be, made attractive, made beautiful, decorated. So the new temple is going to be decorated with a new God.
It's money. Yeah, back.
I have to fix that. Sorry for the interference. Okay. 1 Thessalonians 2 and 4. Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped? So that God, so that he is God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So in other words, he's making himself God. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 4.
2.
There was an error in my typing. Sorry. It is 2 Thessalonians is the correct chapter and verse. So the Christians So I'm a Christian, and I'm gonna you have the Jews that's building the temple, and they're following the Old Testament to make the sacrifices with the animals, blood sacrifice, washing the animal, and so forth, the process there. The Antichrist will appear. And he's going to sit on the throne. And he's going to say, me, I'm God. You worship me. Because I am God. That's what this is saying. So he is in reference to the Antichrist. Is going to sit on the temple to proclaim that he is God. I'm trying to remember the name. There is an institute there in Israel that they are restoring all the elements, all the things that need to be used for sacrificing in the temple. So they are reestablishing the third temple. They have all the clothing, garments, so forth. They have it there. The only thing they don't have, they haven't built the temple yet. They're also, but they're wanting to be sure because they said that the cow, the red cow, could have blemish. They're waiting on time to be sure. They've guaranteed 100%. Okay, so they have guaranteed that red heifer that was born is acceptable. Now they're waiting for the temple to be built. So the temple is going to be built. They have everything lined up and ready and available to use. Now they're just waiting for the temple to be built. So the mosque, or it's called Dome of the Rock, that's where the Muslims worship. And that is where it's established where? It's the ancient site of Solomon's temple. So there's a number of Orthodox Jews who anticipate the reinstitution of animal sacrifice in the near future. So Israel's already been restored as a nation. She's still rejecting the true Messiah, still surrounded by enemy nations. looking for solutions. So many still long for the Messiah. So the man of sin is the Antichrist. And he will be impersonating or representing, being a false, image, that he is the true Christ. And will become the abomination who will bring desolation to the Jewish nation. Antichrist will destroy the Jewish nation. The Jews will flee to the mountain. Once the Antichrist appears and becomes a threat to destroy, they will flee to the nation. We're going to take ownership of it. It has not happened yet. Okay, so that was the end of that slide. Maybe I need to stop here and start a new list. Let me take a look. All right. So this is beginning a new lesson. I've already been studying on this. I know I don't have time to start today, so next Sunday I'll begin teaching regarding Daniel, talking about the beginning of Gentile kingdoms. And here is the king. His name was Nebuchadnezzar. Yeah, there's his name. I missed it. Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king. I'm gonna sign his name this in the shape of a Z for a sign name. This is gonna be Nebuchadnezzar. He had a dream, and it kept reoccurring, and it kept bothering him. And there was a spirit about it, and he was struggling with it. And so he called on those that had the ability to interpret dreams. They studied the stars, and they interpreted dreams with magic and so forth, and sorcery. He called on them. He said, "Hey, I'm having this odd dream. Will you interpret it for me and tell me what it means?" But none of them had the ability to explain that dream. He became very upset, very angered about it. And he commanded them. Yeah, but who? Nebuchadnezzar, he commanded those that were wise men, studied the stars and so forth, that if they couldn't interpret his dream, he would destroy their homes and so forth. I'm trying to catch the concept.
Okay.
So there was a few that were trying to pray and so forth and get understanding what was happening with the king. My understanding, King Nebuchadnezzar, I did read, the chapters. He did not clearly explain to any of them what his dream was. And he said, "Can you tell me what my dream means?" So they were awkward about being able to interpret his dream. And those around didn't believe they could, interpret, so he became very angry. He wanted to kill them, having the soldiers kill them. And Daniel said, hey, give me time. Let me be in prayer and see if I can tell you what your dream means. And there was 3 others that were worshipers of God to show if God would reveal the meaning of that message. What does that image mean in the Nebuchadnezzar's dream? And God gave the understanding and revelation to Daniel. And so, if Daniel had not been able to reveal the dream, he would have been killed also. So they were very thankful and worshiped God for that. And Daniel provided to the king the meaning of his dream. And he said each detail of what this certain part of his dream would mean. You would have power. And King Nebuchadnezzar, what did he do? He wanted to worship Daniel, because thinking Daniel was a god because he interpreted the dream. He commanded that provisions would be given to Daniel and honor him, and to honor those 3 that were with him. There's scripture to support that. It was amazing that God did bless them and save their lives in regards to the king, because he would want to kill them if they could not interpret the dream. I'm going to teach on this next Sunday and go through the scriptures and be more specific on each detail of it. I'm just saying that God gives the ability to interpret. Okay.